God often chooses broken souls to deliver warnings to a world lost in slumber, and the man whose letter was sent to us today is one of them. He once had everything, until a devastating event struck, leaving him with nothing and ultimately breathing his last breath on the side of the road. But in that very moment, Jesus appeared and personally brought him back, with an urgent warning for humanity about the near future after Easter 2025. So, what awaits humanity after Easter 2025? Exactly when? The subtle traps that are silently being prepared. Stay tuned until the end to understand what is truly approaching and to change in time before it's too late. Before we begin the story, please remember that God is always with those who seek Him with a sincere heart. Therefore, leave a comment saying your name _ the city you live in as a declaration before heaven, so that He may know the land where you stand and the secret prayers within your heart. Please click like and subscribe, for it is an action that steps into the awakening mission that God is giving to the final generation. Every action you take is a spark that helps spread the truth to the souls that need to be awakened. Now, here is his testimony. My name is John. At least, that was the name of a man who once had a home, a family, and dignity. But now, I'm just an 80-year-old man, my weary footsteps dragging along the cold sidewalk of a city that no longer has room for people like me. I have no home to return to, no one waiting for me. Lucy, my wife, went to be with the Lord a few years ago, and my children, they have their own lives now. Perhaps by now they've forgotten me. I'm like an old, broken chair, carelessly discarded on the side of the road once it no longer serves a purpose. A lifetime of sacrifice, working hard, saving every little bit, only for everything to vanish into thin air. Tom, my eldest son, used to be my greatest hope. Now he's my greatest pain. That boy once had a future. He was smart, quick-witted, and had a way of speaking that made people trust him. But then he fell into gambling, into debt. I don't even know when it all started. At first, he came with promises that were carefully, cleverly crafted. Dad, I know I've been wrong. I'll change. Then he cried, lamented about his suffering, and begged me for help, just this once. And I, the foolish old man, the father who still believed in his son, handed him the last bit of money Lucy had left me, the money I had planned to live the rest of my days on. He promised he'd pay it back, promised he'd make things right, but then he disappeared. The phone calls went unanswered, the neighbors said they saw him move out, but no one knew where he went. He left me alone in the empty house, with growing debts to the bank, and more than just financial loss. He drained from me what was most precious, my trust in. But because I knew I had lost everything. It wasn't just four walls and a roof. It was the place where Lucy and I grew old together, where the kids grew up, played and laughed. And now, all of it had been washed away like dust. The early days living on the streets were a nightmare. No one is prepared for this. I didn't know where to go, where to return. By day I wandered aimlessly. By night I didn't know where to sleep. I remember the first night I slept under the bridge so clearly. The cold seeped into my bones. The wind howled through the cracks. The distant sound of traffic echoed above, and an overwhelming fear consumed me. I huddled, pulling my thin jacket tightly around me, but it was useless. Then I cried like a child. I used to believe in a merciful, just God. We used to pray before every meal. But now, when there are no meals to pray for, I began to wonder. Looking up at the endless night sky, I whispered, not a prayer but a lament. "Oh God, where are you? Do you every wrinkle on my face. I still clearly remember that day, March 14. I spent the entire day wondering, hoping to find a few odd jobs to earn enough for a hot meal. But no one needed an 80-year-old man. No one paid attention to me. The pain in my joints tormented me. Hunger clawed at my insides like a beast, and the cold seeped deep into my bones. Then dizziness struck. I tried to drag myself to the nearest bench in the park, where I usually slept every night. But suddenly the ground beneath my feet seemed to shake, and the whole world spun violently. Everything around me blurred, became unclear, and my ears were filled with a muffled sound, unable to hear anything clearly. A vague thought crossed my mind. Is this it? Am I finally getting some rest? But right at that moment, strange things began to happen. I no longer felt cold, no longer in pain, no longer exhausted. All the hunger, the sharp pain, the crushing despair suddenly vanished. I felt as light as a feather, as if I had just shed a burden that had weighed me down for my entire life. A freedom I had never known before. At first there was only darkness, but it wasn't the kind of darkness that frightens people. It was just a vast, quiet space, and strangely, I felt peace. I realized I was in another place, not on the cold bench in the dark park. It felt as though I was floating in an invisible, weightless space. Then I saw myself, an old man with grey hair, frail shoulders, lying motionless on the bench. But strangely, I didn't feel afraid. There was no pain that crushed me when I saw that image. And then light appeared. It was a warm, gentle, radiant light, a light that could not only be seen with the eyes but felt as well. It enveloped me, soothing me like a mother's embrace. A gentle force pulled me toward that light. There was no pressure, no fear, only an intense longing to draw closer. I began to hear a sound, a soft, sweet melody, so beautiful it was beyond words. It was as though the wind was singing, as if every sound in the universe had come together in harmony to create a song of peace. Perhaps I had truly found my way home. I continued moving toward the light, and honestly, at that moment, I didn't even remember if I was moving toward the light or being drawn into it, and within it, there was wisdom, an infinite love. Then a figure appeared from the light. I knew it was Jesus Christ. He stood there, simply, his bright robe flowing in the light. His face was not only gentle but also understanding, and without saying a word I felt small before him, not from fear or shame, but from a deep respect, like a child standing before a father who always loves them unconditionally. He reached out, his hand gently touching me. A warm wave spread from where his hand touched. I have always been with you, even when you couldn't feel me. Your pain I have also endured. The bitterness within me began to fade. There was no more anger, no more blaming, only a sense of relief. In my mind, he spoke, "John, you are here for a reason. You have endured much suffering, but your faith, though wavering, has not completely faded." I blinked, not fully understanding why I had to bring this message back, but it seemed that God heard my confusion, for he continued, "Because you have nothing left to lose in this world, but everything to give. You are not deceived by glory or success, and it is your brokenness that makes you more receptive to my voice than anyone else." Then a window of time opened before me, not a frozen image, but like a film playing slowly. Jesus said, "About that day and hour no one knows, not even the angels in heaven, nor the Son, but only the Father." I recognized the words immediately, Matthew 24:36. I had read them in my Bible and heard them quoted by my pastor on many Sundays. But Jesus wasn't finished. "Still, I must show you the signs, so that my people may recognize when the time is near and prepare their hearts." Signs? I frowned as the window shifted before me, still unsure. "Why me?" I asked. "What am I being shown?" Jesus looked at me, his eyes filled with compassion. "Because you need to see." And somehow, I didn't just hear his answer with my ears, I felt it resonate within my soul, like a breeze brushing through my spirit. "Watch closely," he said. "The signs I am about to show you will mark a turning point for the world. And after the world celebrates my resurrection in 2025, you will begin to see them more clearly." There was weight in his voice now, not merely words of encouragement, but the tone of a warning, urgent and real. My resurrection is not only a victory over death, it is the declaration of hope, of renewal purchased by my blood. It is the day of true life, of transformation, and it will mark a shift. My heart raced. I'd heard Easter messages my whole life, but this felt different. When Jesus himself spoke, each word carried eternal significance. He continued, and his voice turned grave. "The enemy knows the power of this day. He cannot change the truth, but he will attempt to hijack the moment after the world remembers salvation, to unleash his greatest deception. He will offer a false renewal, a counterfeit solution wrapped in convenience and reason, at the exact time when many are beginning to look toward heaven. After Easter 2025, the line between choosing me and choosing the system of the world specifically about this? I wanted to ask more, but he gently raised his hand. Then the window before me surged with light and motion. The images became clearer, more vivid. "Now watch," Jesus said. "Watch how the signs unfold. Watch how the deception begins." The light flashed, and I held my breath. Like a giant film projected in the sky, scenes passed, crowding the streets, laughing in shopping malls, working in shining offices. On the surface, everything looked normal, but beneath it, something felt off. It wasn't war or chaos, it was hollowness. A quiet anxiety lingered in every face, in every hurried step. In the next scene, I saw luxury apartments, glowing screens, and wealthy people surrounded by comfort. But their eyes untouched. Some churches still had crowds, but the messages had shifted. They were no longer preaching repentance or righteousness. They were giving motivational speeches about success and self-worth. And then I noticed something far more chilling. A darkness, not like a shadow, not like night, but something invisible and terrifying, was creeping into the world. It didn't attack. It didn't frighten. Instead, it dulled the senses, it numbed the soul. It made people indifferent to God, to grow cold toward the sacred. When the soul is neglected for the pleasures of this world, that is when the darkness finds its way in. Pay attention, John. This is only the beginning. The vision shifted again. The sky became like a vast screen, displaying vivid images of a world stepping into a new era. On giant displays in crowded city squares and across global news networks, familiar faces began to appear. Presidents, CEOs of major tech firms, leaders of banks and international organizations. Their faces exuded confidence and determination. "We are standing at a historic crossroads," one man in a flawlessly tailored suit declared to the masses. After years of economic turmoil, social unrest, and increasingly advanced cyber attacks, it's time for a bold solution. A global system designed to protect and elevate the quality of life for everyone. The crowds erupted in applause. The excitement was contagious. Bold letters flashed across the screens. "Solution for the future, a new global system." What followed was the unveiling of a fully digitalized world economy. Cash, physical cards, and even passwords were deemed outdated. In their place, a revolutionary technology was introduced, a microchip, no larger than a grain of rice, implanted just beneath the skin. "This chip will make life easier," a charismatic spokeswoman explained. "With this digital ID, you'll never worry about losing your wallet, identity theft, or fraud. Just one touch. Pay bills, open doors, access your medical records. No paperwork, no passwords." It all sounded flawless, too flawless. Then I felt it, that cold shiver again. Jesus appeared beside me, his expression solemn. "After Easter 2025, you will begin to see all of this come to pass, faster than you expect," he said. "At first it will seem like a choice, a convenience, but quickly it will become a condition. Participation in society will demand it." The images continued to evolve. News anchors changed their tone. What began as excitement subtly shifted to insistence. "Those who reject this technology may face difficulties accessing basic services," one anchor stated, her voice sweet but firm. "This is not the loss of freedom," a smiling politician added. "This is progress. Safety for all, advancement for humanity." I swallowed hard. Pay attention. I watched more closely. The device they promoted was remarkably small, embedded discreetly beneath the skin of the hand or forehead. It was nearly invisible unless you knew where to look, and yet it could replace everything. Your credit cards, ID, passport, keys, tickets, medical files. All of life digitized, reduced to a single chip. "Just swipe once," they said, "and everything you need is right there. Payment, access, movement. No wallets, no waiting. Total control." The people clapped. They cheered. But no one paused to question what might be hiding behind all that convenience. "Do you see?" Jesus asked. "This chip will become the gateway to every part of life. Buying, selling, traveling, healing, proving who you are. It will become resistance, but the price is the soul. The cost is true freedom." His words echoed deep within me like thunder rolling across my spirit. What looked like progress was a slow, creeping control. A beautiful trap, so finely designed that people would walk into it smiling. I couldn't help but ask, "Lord, if it's so dangerous spiritually, why would people accept it?" Jesus looked at me, and in his eyes I saw both sorrow and compassion. At first, he said gently, "It won't seem dangerous at all. The enemy is clever. He doesn't appear as a monster, but as an angel of light, offering solutions that seem good, logical, and easy. People won't see the trap, not right away. They will accept it step by step, believing it's the answer to their problems. And by the time they realize what they've surrendered, it will feel too late." I stood in silence, my mind racing, but deep down I knew he was right. Then his voice calmed, reassuring but firm. "Those who refuse this system will face many hardships. They'll be labeled outcasts, seen as obstacles to progress. But listen, isn't always visible. It isn't always celebrated. In fact, in a world that's rapidly trading truth for comfort, true freedom may look like resistance, and it will cost something, but it will be worth everything." Society began to change. On the surface, everything seemed fine, orderly and normal. People continued their daily lives, bustling streets and daily transactions. In coffee shops, people just needed to swipe their hands to pay. No cash, no cards. Everyone seemed proud to be keeping up with the times. But something felt off. Despite their busy lives, people lacked warmth in their eyes. Their smiles and conversations no longer seemed genuine. There was an emptiness in every action, every gesture. I noticed those who hadn't undergone the implant began to be treated differently. Isolated from the rest of society. At home, families still sat together, but the conversations were no longer real. Words and pleasantries felt mechanical, lacking sincerity. People pretended to be happy, but I sensed a deep void of genuine emotion. Everything, from their words to their glances, was influenced by the implant. They were like puppets controlled by invisible signals, signals I couldn't see but could feel clearly. On the streets, I saw people walking aimlessly, following instructions from their devices. They believed they were acting freely, but in reality they were being controlled by an invisible force. Jesus had told me this, and now I saw it was true. People's free will was being eroded. They believed they were in control, but they were being guided without realizing it. Looking at those around me, I felt a thick fog covering them. A heaviness not just physically, but spiritually. It was as though they had lost the ability to perceive the sacred, no longer hearing God's voice within them. I remembered Jesus' words. They think they are in control of the technology, but in reality, the technology and system control them. They are trading their immortal souls for temporary comfort. Those words echoed in my mind, and I felt a deep sadness. Jesus continued, "That is how the enemy works, slowly, subtly, step by step. It creates dependency. People will become entirely controllable. The children will grow up without knowing true freedom, and hearing my voice will become very difficult. Parents, trying to protect their children, implant them from a young age. They think they're doing what's best for their children's future, that it's the safest solution. But they don't realize that these children will grow up without understanding true freedom, and they'll struggle to connect with me." The sadness in his voice was undeniable. We are losing the most precious thing, our freedom and connection to the Creator. Some churches and influential leaders have begun to change their attitudes. They no longer condemn implants, now calling them a blessing from God, a tool to serve Him. They even say it has nothing to do with faith. Hearing this made my heart uneasy. It was a disturbing sign, as though they were opening the door to deception. Jesus said something I will never forget. "They will call my name with their lips, but their hearts will be far from me." Jesus warned me, many my outward success, the allure of the world. The pastor, with all his confidence, encouraged the congregation to get the implants, turning the church into an organization functioning like a business, focusing on data instead of the Holy Spirit. He didn't realize that he was leading his flock astray. Jesus spoke to me with deep conviction. These pastors think they are helping, but they are blind to the spiritual loss they are causing. The faithful feel anxious, unsettled, and they just want to hold on to their faith, but they are confused by what is happening. When church leaders began hearing objections, they measured by faithfulness, even at the cost of sacrifice. I understood that those who stand firm in true faith would face challenges, but they would always have His protection and guidance. The government and large organizations began requiring people to get the implants to access public services, travel, or even work. I saw those who refused the implants being denied basic rights. They couldn't shop, margins. They couldn't buy, use banks, go to the doctor or work. They were restricted and abandoned by society. Yet they held on to their faith. Their lives were simple, self-sufficient. They exchanged goods, secretly gathered to pray, study the Bible, and support one another. Despite material hardships, they had peace in their hearts, a faith no one could take away. I saw how the system relentlessly pursued them. They were labeled as dissenters, a threat to the social order. And I knew that in a world like this, people would become the eyes of the system, reporting anyone who did not comply. I witnessed someone being denied bread simply because they didn't have the implant. But the cost became clearer. The government arrested the steadfast for causing disturbances, spreading fake news, or opposing progress. They were interrogated, fined, had their property seized, beaten, and detained. Those who refused the implants faced tremendous psychological pressure, forced to accept the system to escape the fear and pain. Jesus warned me, the enemy will use every means to wear them down. He will isolate them, using fear and pain to try to break their faith. Despite this, I understood that the faithful would never abandon Jesus, and he would protect them. I witnessed those who refused the implants gathering in remote areas. They were few in number and lacked many essentials, yet their spirits remained unbroken. They prayed wholeheartedly and worshipped sincerely, despite the hardships they faced. In their most desperate moments, a miracle would happen. Food would multiply and the sick would be healed. They lived in peace, surrounded by a divine light, even though they were physically exhausted. Jesus' words echoed in my mind, "The faithful will never be forsaken, but they must be willing to suffer for my name." I realized that with unwavering faith, God would always guide them through the trials ahead. I couldn't help but ask Jesus, how can people resist the deception? How can they recognize it? Jesus answered gently, "Prepare now, before everything accelerates after Easter. The only way to stand firm is to know me deeply. Learn to hear my voice, dive into my word and the scriptures, pray without ceasing, and seek a close personal relationship through the Holy Spirit." Jesus continued, "Many of my people are not yet ready. Their faith is shallow, easily shaken. That's why you must warn them. Build a spiritual foundation on the rock, which is me." I felt the strength and profound statement, "You cannot wait until then to start seeking me. The time to prepare is now." I began to understand that the enemy's plan is not one of direct force, but one that lures through convenience, false safety, and social pressure. A great change is coming, and it will come swiftly after Easter 2025. The global implant system will be swept into the living relationship with me. Those who know my voice through my word and the Holy Spirit will stand firm. They have built their foundation on the rock. So go back and warn them. I realize the time to prepare is now. We can no longer afford to wait. The changes ahead will come fast, and only those with a deep connection to Christ will remain grounded in the truth. Suddenly, I felt a powerful, irresistible pull, as if being yanked backward, dragged into a dark, narrow tunnel. Everything around me began to change. The first sensation was one of sharp contrast. Suddenly, I felt the cold, damp stone bench press against my skin. It was completely different from the warmth I had just experienced. The aching pain in my old joints returned. While I had felt some relief at first, I was soon reminded of the harsh reality. As my eyes adjusted to the light, I noticed the face of a stranger. with a few wrinkles around his eyes, leaning over me with a concerned look. At that moment, one thought crossed my mind. Am I still alive? A miracle may have occurred, or perhaps this was the person that God sent so I could share my feelings. When I woke up, I saw a strange man standing near my bed. His name was Simon, about 50 years old, and he owned a small diner called Dino's Diner. I still remember that day clearly. He smiled kindly and said to me, "Hello, Mr. John. I'm Dino, the one who called the ambulance for you last night. I just wanted to check on you." Dino then handed me a cup of coffee and placed a small bag beside me, inside which were a toothbrush, toothpaste, and a clean towel. These simple, small things, though modest, were incredibly practical and touched my heart. Dino sat down on the chair next to my bed and asked me sincerely. He wasn't too curious about my past, but he gently asked, "Is there anyone I should contact for you?" That simple question made me feel a bit uneasy, but his kindness didn't make me feel intruded upon. I just shook my head, feeling a deep sadness. After I finished telling my story, Dino sat in silence for a moment, as if thinking. Then he looked directly at me and said that he couldn't imagine everything I had gone through, the pain and the near-death experience, but he believed me. He believed every word I said. Dino told me that evening he rarely took that route home, but that night something urged him to turn that way, and that's when he found me lying there. We both thought, no, we believed it was God's plan. Then Dino told me not to worry about the medical bills, as God had blessed his work enough to cover the costs. He considered it his way of helping me. He mentioned that at Dino's Diner the work was quite busy, but he needed some tasks like wiping down tables, washing dishes and preparing vegetables. The job wasn't heavy, just required attention to detail. He also said I would be paid fairly for my work. Finally, Dino said there was a small room upstairs, not luxurious but clean and cozy. He told me I could stay there for free, at least until I got back on my feet. At that moment I was stunned, unable to believe what I was hearing. After so many control, freedom, our connection with God will slowly be eroded, and only those who have built a solid foundation in faith will be able to stand firm. Remember, preparation cannot wait until the change has already occurred. We must start right now, diving into God's Word, praying, and building a deep and personal relationship with Him through the Holy Spirit. To Eternal Bible Stories, where we bring you the most powerful and life-changing near-death experiences, stories that unveil hidden truths about life, death, and the unseen world beyond. Today's testimony is unlike anything you've ever heard. A man died and found himself before Jesus Christ, but instead of just witnessing heaven or hell, he was given something far greater, a prophetic vision of Earth's future. What he saw was both terrifying and awe-inspiring. It was not just about his own soul, but a warning for all of humanity. What did Jesus reveal about what's coming to our world? Are we standing on the brink of destruction, or is there still hope? Listen carefully, because what you're about to hear may change everything you thought you knew about the future. My name is Samuel Harper. I am 71 years old, and I live in Montana, where endless mountain ranges stretch across the horizon and ancient forests cast their shadows. Despite my age, my passion for hunting burns as fiercely as it did. To me, life was simply about survival and enjoying what I had. That day was a special occasion. My children and grandchildren had come home for the holidays. The house was suddenly filled with laughter, and I felt young again. I wanted to contribute to the family feast just as I had done for years. A fat deer, taken down with my own hands, would make for a meal to remember. Even though my wife and children urged me to rest, deep into the woods, choosing a tree stand about 20 feet high, a perfect vantage point for an ambush. Securing myself to the stand, I pulled my rifle up with a rope and patiently waited. I had done this hundreds of times before, but that morning, one split-second mistake changed everything. A sudden snap echoed through the trees. The safety strap had broken. I felt my body plunge into the air, free-falling towards the earth below. Time seemed to slow down. I saw leaves trembling, heard the wind howling past my ears, and felt every moment of my descent. In that instant, I wasn't just thinking about a fall. I knew this was the end. Darkness swallowed me whole. I knew this was the end, and though only a few seconds remained before impact, everything seemed to slow down unnaturally. My thoughts raced like a flood breaking through a dam. My wife, my children, my grandchildren, my family. Would anyone find me? Would I simply vanish in these woods, forgotten? The realization struck me like a hammer. I had never considered death in this way before. I had always been strong, capable, confident in my body, and now, in an instant, I was helpless. As the ground rushed toward me, a strange calm settled over my mind, as if part of me already knew what was coming. Then, everything faded into darkness. Happened. I felt myself separate from my body. Crawled on the rocks below, my limbs twisted unnaturally, blood seeping from my mouth, my ears, my nose. I should have felt horror, but instead I was gripped by a strange sense of detachment, as if my emotions no longer belonged to me. There was no pain, no panic, just an eerie, weightless clarity. And then I felt it. A force unlike anything I had ever known, pulling me upward with an undeniable strength. I ascended with staggering speed, moving beyond the treetops, beyond the clouds, beyond everything I had ever known. Earth shrank beneath me, its blue and green hues glowing like a precious gem against the vast. Considering what lay beyond, and now I was soaring through the very cosmos itself. Planets swirled in the distance, massive and majestic, their colors more vivid than anything visible. Possible, but my soul knew better. The speed intensified, pulling me deeper into the unknown, past distant galaxies, past wonders I could not name. Then suddenly I was no longer in open space. I was inside something. A tunnel, vast and endless, its walls shimmering with colors I had never seen before. Light began to grow. Not just a glow, but a I had no control over my direction, yet I felt no need to resist. I was being drawn towards something far greater than myself. Then, as suddenly as I had entered, I emerged into an entirely new realm. Before me stood a colossal staircase, each step seemingly carved from pure, glowing energy. It stretched upward, leading to what appeared to be a bridge or a grand walkway. My gaze followed its path, and in the distance I saw something beyond belief. A city unlike anything I had ever imagined. It shimmered like crystalline glass, its structures both delicate and impossibly strong, glowing with hues that pulsed like a living heartbeat. It was breathtaking, a sight that defied every earthly understanding of beauty. I felt an overwhelming sense of awe, an instinctive recognition that this was no ordinary place. I moved forward, drawn toward the city, my mind overflowing with questions. Was this heaven? Was I truly dead? If so, why was everything so different from what I had been taught? The sheer magnitude of what I was seeing left me speechless. As I approached the towering gates, I saw a set of massive double doors, polished to such perfection that they reflected the brilliance of the city itself. They stood at least 30 feet tall, an entrance meant for something far greater than mere mortal. I hesitated, unsure of what to do next, but before I could even process my thoughts, the doors began to open. Endless corridors and towering structures. People moved within, yet they were unlike any I had ever seen before. They walked with purpose, yet their faces were hidden beneath long, hooded robes. Their presence carried a weight, as if they belonged to something far over. Cautiously, my gaze darting between the robed figures, who seemed completely unaware of me. It was as if I were invisible, a ghost wandering through a world beyond my comprehension. Then one of them stopped. Unlike the others, he turned his head slowly, lifting his face toward me. I was struck by the eerie, otherworldly nature of his appearance. He looked human, yet something about him was undeniably different. His eyes, there were no pupils, only shifting shades of green that seemed to swirl like liquid energy. His hair was white as snow. My gaze followed his gesture, leading me toward a long, dimly lit hallway stretching into the unknown. Though he said nothing, I understood. I was meant to go that way. My feet moved before my mind could question it. There was something waiting for me at the end of that corridor, something I needed to see. The figure the weight of inevitability settling over. Finally, I reached the end. Another pair of massive double doors loomed before me, their surface smooth and metallic. Were they gold, or something beyond human comprehension? Before I could ponder further, the doors swung open violently, a force unseen commanding their movement. A voice spoke, not in sound, but directly into my very being. "Enter." I obeyed without question. The doors slammed shut behind me, plunging me into absolute darkness. For the first time since my journey began, fear gripped me. There was nothing, no light, no movement. Began. Did my eyes, yet the light pierced through me, illuminating my soul rather than my vision. Within the radiance, a form took shape. It was seated upon something. Was it a throne? The details eluded me, yet the presence was undeniable. And then, suddenly, it spoke. "What have you done with your life?" The voice shattered through me like 1,000 echoes colliding at once. It wasn't just a question, it was a reckoning. My soul trembled under the weight of it. I opened my mouth, but no words came. I had no answer. Before me, a blinding light suddenly flashed, and then I saw it. A massive screen unfolding in the vast emptiness. But this was not just an ordinary projection. It was a living memory. I was not merely an observer watching from the outside. Somehow I was inside it. It was as if I had been pulled backward in time, reliving every moment of my existence with such vivid clarity that I could feel every breath, every emotion, as if they were happening all over again. I saw my mother, her face contorted in pain as she gave birth to me. I heard my first cries, the laughter of my father as he held me in his arms for the first time. Then the images accelerated. My childhood, the afternoons spent running through endless fields, the echoing laughter of friends. I watched myself grow, mature, make decisions and choose paths. No detail was omitted. Every moment, no matter how small or seemingly insignificant, was laid bare before me. I saw the good I had an unfamiliar man stranded beside his car on a deserted road, his fuel tank empty, his face lined with worry. I watched myself return, a simple act, yet I could feel his relief, his gratitude washing over me. As the image faded, a voice emerged from the light. Not loud, but resonating with undeniable authority. "You did not hesitate to help this soul, nor did you expect like a knife." I felt the weight of my cruel words, the sting of my indifference. I saw the ripple effect of my actions, how a single careless I had never considered that my life could have such an impact. I had always assumed that my actions were insignificant, that they faded into nothingness. But now I understood. Everything we do leaves a mark. Every decision, no matter how small, creates ripples that spread outward, affecting people in ways we may never realize. And as I witnessed the full extent of my influence, I was overcome with regret. I had done too little, cared too little, wasted too much time, chasing things that held no real. Again, this time firmer, more commanding. "You must return." I jolted in shock. Return? I didn't want to return. Here I had seen the truth, grasped the meaning behind everything. I didn't fleeting desires where I would once again be trapped in a frail mortal body. I longed to stay. I needed more answers. I needed to understand more. I know you have many questions, but your time has not yet come. You must return and help others change by changing your own life first. The voice thundered once more, its weight pressing deep into my soul like an indelible mark of destiny. The doctors will insist on operating on you. Do not allow this to happen. If you do, you will never walk again. Each word carried an urgency I could not ignore. Then, like a dam breaking, a flood of knowledge surged into my mind. Visions, warnings, instructions, as if the very blueprint of my fate was being laid before me. A visitor will come to you, bringing answers to the questions that weigh on your heart. When I call, you will return. You will recover from everything that has happened. But I saw towering entire skies against a merciless tide. In the streets, anarchy reigned. Crowds rioted in desperation, their faces of civilization. World War III had begun. But this was no conventional war. There were no borders, no alliances, no clear enemies or victors. The entire world had become a battlefield, and the only rule left was survival. I saw once thriving nations reduced to wastelands, their governments collapsed, their leaders vanished. The United States, once the greatest superpower, had fallen. There was no law, fighting for the few resources that remained. The streets became hunting grounds where the strong preyed upon the weak. Families were torn apart as fathers and sons killed for food. Stretched as far as the eye could see, cities buried under the weight of snow and lived in comfort were now reduced to scavengers, digging through the ruins for anything that could sustain them. But hunger was an enemy that showed no mercy. I saw the skeleton cradled lifeless children in their arms, their screams lost in the howling winds of a world that had abandoned them. Then, a force into the sky, blotting out the sun. Darkness fell over the land, a suffocating, choking blackness that stretched across continents. The world turned cold as an eerie twilight descended, casting a shadow of doom over all who remained. Acid rain poured from the heavens, scorching what little life had survived. Cities vanished beneath layers of ash so thick that entire civilizations were buried alive. The air became poison. Those without gas masks suffocated in the streets, their bodies collapsing where they stood. Nuclear winter had begun. And still the destruction was not complete. I turned my eyes skyward just as an explosion in space sent shockwaves through the atmosphere. An EMP detonation. The world's entire power grid collapsed in an instant. The lights went out, the internet vanished, every means of communication was severed. In a blink, humanity was thrust into a new dark age. No electricity, no technology, no ruled by force, and the weak were slaughtered. I saw desperate hands clutching at empty water taps, saw blood spilled over scraps of rotting food. Cities that had once symbolized progress and power now lay silent, reduced to crumbling tombs. Then, just as despair reached its peak, a flicker of hope emerged. A new generation had risen. They were young, unburdened by the corruption of the past. Unlike those before them, they were not driven by greed nor poisoned by power. They had survived, not through violence, but through unity. I saw them rebuilding, not with steel and glass, but with harmony and wisdom. Their cities were simple, woven into nature itself. There were no more empires, no more tyrants, no more wars. They had learned what humanity had long forgotten, that true wealth was not found in gold, but in peace. "It is time for you to leave," the voice spoke one last time, and I knew there was no arguing with it. I longed to stay, to witness the rebirth of the world, to see what would come next, but the choice was not mine to make. A great door materialized before me, and before I could resist, I was seized by an unseen force, yanked backward through the path from which I had come. I was pulled through the void at unimaginable speed. Stars blurred past me, galaxies streaked into nothingness, and the earth loomed closer and closer. I saw it all, the blue planet, the vast forests, the winding rivers. I saw my own body still lying there, lifeless upon the rock, and in that final moment before I re-entered my flesh, understanding flooded through me. I had been given a second chance, a chance to change, a chance to make things right, a chance to warn the world before it was too late. And then I opened my eyes. I saw my body lying there, motionless on the cold rock, my empty eyes staring blankly at the grey sky above. A tremendous force surged through my soul like a violent electric shock, yanking me back into reality. In a fleeting instant, every cell in my body seemed to jolt awake. I gasped for air, but my lungs refused to fill. Pain crashed over me like a wild beast, tearing through my flesh. My chest convulsed, every breath was sheer agony, my throat was thick with blood, and half my body felt completely paralyzed. I struggled to turn over, but a searing pain shot from my spine down to the tips of my toes, sending shudders through me. I was alive, but survival did not mean safety. I looked up at the sky. The sun was lower than when I had fallen. How long had I been lying here? I forced my gaze down to my watch, 5:30 p.m. Darkness would soon descend, and with it, the temperature would plummet. If I didn't find a way to signal for help, I would freeze to death right here. I turned my head, scanning for my rifle. It was only a few feet away, still tethered to the strap wrapped around my waist. Summoning every ounce of remaining strength, I clawed toward it, my body screaming in protest. The pain was so unbearable that tears streamed down my face. I gritted my teeth, grasped the barrel, lifted it, and pulled the trigger. The gunshot shattered the eerie silence of the deep woods. I waited, straining to hear any response. Nothing, only silence. I fired another shot, then another, spacing them out every 10 minutes. But the silence remained, vast, oppressive, swallowing me whole. I was bleeding out. I was freezing, and I knew I couldn't just lie here and wait for death. I had to move, no matter the cost. I began to crawl. I dragged my broken body through layers of dry leaves, through jagged thorns that tore at my skin. Pain exploded in every joint, but I clenched my teeth and forced my arms to keep pulling. Every inch forward felt like an eternity, but I refused to stop. I crawled over rocks, through thick brush, every movement sending a fresh wave of agony through my shattered spine. I blacked out, then woke up, then crawled again. I had no concept of time, only the raw, burning instinct to survive. Then, as I lifted my head, I saw it, through the dense canopy of trees, a narrow dirt road leading home. A flicker of hope ignited inside me, but I was too weak to scream for help. I parted my lips, but only feeble, broken whispers escaped. And then I heard it, the distant growl of an engine. I wanted to weep with relief. I poured every last ounce of strength into dragging myself toward the middle of the road, desperate to make myself seen, but my body betrayed me. I collapsed, trembling, unable to do anything but wait. Headlights flared, cutting through the twilight, illuminating my battered form. I heard a car door slam, followed by hurried footsteps. It was my father-in-law. He dropped to his knees beside me, eyes wide with terror. "Oh, dear God. Samuel, you're alive." I tried to smile, but only a weak, bloodied cough escaped my lips. I felt his trembling hands gripping me tightly. "You're going to be okay," I heard him whisper, his voice shaking. "Just hold on." That was the last thing I remembered before I saw the bright light in the emergency room. A doctor stood at the foot of my bed. "Can you feel this?" he asked. "Feel what?" I replied, confused. Then I saw him press a sharp instrument against my leg. But there was nothing, no pain, no sensation. "You're paralyzed." His words hit me like a hammer. "We can't treat you here, son," the doctor continued. "We're going to transfer you by ambulance to a hospital that can handle your condition." Whether it was due to pain or the effects of the medication, my world faded to black once again. When I woke up the next afternoon, 2 doctors stood at the end of my hospital bed. They introduced themselves as my attending physicians and explained the urgency of my situation. "Your spine is broken, and the fractured vertebrae are compressing your spinal cord," one of them said. "You need immediate surgery or the paralysis will be permanent." Then it happened. A voice, the same voice that had spoken to me before, echoed in my mind. "Do not let them operate. If they do, you will never walk again." I instantly understood, though I knew the doctors would never believe me. "I need to see my wife and daughter first," I told them. They exchanged glances, but agreed to let me speak to my family. When my wife and daughter arrived, their faces were filled with worry. I looked into my wife's eyes and took a deep breath. "I can't go through with the surgery," I said firmly. She stared at me in shock. "Samuel, what are you saying? The doctors said this is the only way to save you." I struggled to explain. How could I tell her what I had seen, that I had been given knowledge beyond human understanding? "You have to trust me," I pleaded. "If I have this surgery, I will never walk again." She hesitated, tears welling in her eyes. Though she didn't understand, she respected my decision. When the doctors returned, I told them my choice. They were furious. "If you refuse surgery, you will never walk again," one of them snapped. "Do you understand that?" I simply nodded. "I will walk," I whispered. That night, doubt crept in. Had I made a mistake? Was I throwing away my only chance? Tears streamed down my face. I prayed, not for healing, but for understanding. Then a radiant light filled my hospital room. "You will be healed." The voice was calm, yet powerful. Then it was gone. The days turned into weeks. The weeks turned into months. I lay in bed, unable to move. But deep inside, I knew. I was waiting for the promise to be fulfilled. And then one morning, it happened. A tingling sensation ran through my feet. My heart pounded. I could feel something. I called the nurse. "I want to stand up." She looked at me sympathetically. "Let's take it one step at a time," she said, unconvinced. But I knew. She called my doctor, and the next morning he arrived. "So, you think you can walk?" he asked skeptically. "Yes." "All right," he said. "Let's see." They wheeled me down to the physical therapy room and lifted me into an upright position. 2 nurses helped me stand in front of the parallel bars. I gripped the bars tightly and took a deep breath. Then a step, then another. "Oh my God, he's walking!" the nurse cried out. Tears filled my eyes, but I kept moving. Each step was a battle, but I knew I was winning. Over the next few days, I continued my therapy. My family watched in astonishment, but deep inside I wasn't surprised. I had been warned. I had been prepared. Later, my doctor reviewed my latest X-rays. He stared at them for a long time before shaking his head. This isn't normal," he finally said. "It's like a higher power did what we intended to do with surgery. I've never seen anything like this before." I smiled. I had, because I had been told it would happen. Samuel Harper was given a second chance, but not everyone will be. His story is not just about survival. It's about a truth that so many refuse to see. A glimpse beyond death, a warning of what's to come, and a call to change before it's too late. How many of us are sleepwalking through life, thinking we have all the time in the world? But when that final moment arrives, will we be ready? If this story has made you think, let us know in the comments where you're listening from, or type Amen if you feel its weight. Samuel saw the future, saw what awaits those who turn a blind eye, and he was sent back to share it. The question is, will we listen? Will we take the warning seriously, or will we ignore it until it's too late? Don't keep this story to yourself. Someone you know needs to hear it. Share it with your friends, your family, and your community. Time is running out, and the truth is not something we can afford to ignore. Subscribe and turn on notifications. We will continue to bring stories that open eyes and awaken souls. The truth is being revealed. The only question left is, what will you do with it?